Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Joining me now is New York City Councilwoman Vickie Paladino. Councilwoman, thank you so much for joining me once again.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm really interested in talking about an issue that has garnered national attention. The news of squatters taking advantage of legal loopholes that allow them to live in homes without paying rent has really rocked the 5 boroughs of New York City. What's your take on the situation?
Well, we've hit crisis mode here. We are seeing more and more people just taking these, I call it crimes of opportunity, whereas there's several layers to this cake when we talk about squatters. There's tenants that are good tenants that all of a sudden wake up one morning and decide they don't want to pay you rent. That's a problem. Then we have people who just come into your home while you're away and decide that they're going to make your home their home. And then we have the others that are coming in and taking over your home while you're not there. But this is really unbelievable. They actually are going to licensed real estate brokers and they are renting out your home. So they could be living in the basement and they go to a real estate broker with no proof that it's their home, which I want changed. And they go talk to the real estate broker and they say, I have either a basement to rent or several bedrooms in the house to rent. And this is what's happening throughout the city. And now when you come back from your vacation, say you're gone 2 weeks, your neighbor is noticing what's going on. Like, this isn't right. You know, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so are not home. So they call you, let's say you're in Florida. They instruct you, the neighbor, to call the police. The police come. The neighbor comes out. The neighbor says to the police, there's stuff going on in this house that it should not be going. My neighbor is away in Florida. Now, they go to knock on the door. The squatter comes to the door, chooses not to answer the door. But if he does choose to answer the door, he tells the police officer that they are there 30 days. He has no proof. So, and they're not asked for proof. So the police look at your neighbor and says, well, they're here for 30 days. Your neighbor says, no, my friends just left a couple of weeks ago. But they need to go through all of this, show me the proof, show me the proof. So there's so many different layers to this cake, and they know how to do it. They are educated on how to do this. They know it inside out. 30 days, bing, you are in, and you as a squatter are in, and you as the homeowner are out. Very dangerous situation.
The first question that comes to mind, obviously, is how is this legal? Because when you laid out the different scenarios, the first one you mentioned was there was a good tenant and then they just stopped paying rent. That happened to my old landlord, and they were in that apartment for years. When I moved apartments, he was still dealing with it years later. So you're the lawmaker here. How is this legal?
Well, it goes back to New York State. You see, once again, now I have legislation I wanted introduced. And it was sitting there and sitting there and sitting there. I first introduced this back in January of 23 because of what was going on in my own district. How could we prevent this from happening? Then it went still, crickets. They said we have to pull it. We never pulled it. So what we did now with the onslaught of what we have going on in the 5 boroughs, I said, I want this bill, put it back in. We never took it out. So that was a good thing. So I was what is called first in time. Being first in time means that I have the ability to be the prime sponsor on something that I brought up last year that nobody was even in tune to. Nobody. And because it was happening in my district. So I said, okay, fine. Now I want it reintroduced. I was now told that because in New York State in 1982, they created the 30-day squatter rule. That was for all of New York State. So at that time, it did not exist here in New York City. So in 2019, when we lost control, the Republicans lost control of the New York State Senate, that is when the majority became anti-landlord, and that is when it broke out into the city. So right now, my bill is sitting dormant. The law I want passed is sitting dormant, and nothing can be done until they start to shake, rattle, and roll upstate New York. So once again, New York City is being held captive by our state government, which we know is all Democrats.
Can you talk about what was happening in your district at the beginning of last year that made you want to introduce this? What was the impetus?
When I ran for my city council seat in 2021, I had a lot of volunteers. A couple of my volunteers lived on the same block. And what had happened was they said, Vickie, can you help us? I said, what's the issue? They said, squatters. Well, I have a squatter next door, and it became a drug house. It was absolutely unbelievable, the conditions this young woman, her husband, 2 kids, and her father were living under. So I went by her house. I saw what was going on, and she says all hours of the day and night, the house was in shambles. Wood was up instead of windows. It looked like nobody lived there. The fact of the matter was, he was running drug deals. It was a drug den. They would go there to shoot up. They were doing all kinds of things because she had a camera. She was keeping track of what was going on. Sometimes people were ringing her bell by mistake. It was a mess. So I promised her. I said, if I get into office, if I win this election, I will do everything in my power to help you. So I did win. And that's when it started. I didn't wait to get sworn in. That's when I went to the block. The video actually went viral. That's when the guy blew the smoke in my face. I don't know if you saw it.
I've seen that. Yes, I've seen that.
That, yes, what the impetus was, that was it. That was it. And I said, come January when I'm sworn in, we're going to bring up legislation. We're going to do whatever we can to help you. Now, everybody saw this. Everybody saw this video. And I started to go after squatters personally. I would go to the house myself, and I would bang on the door. And I would tell them, what you're doing here is illegal. Illegal. And I did quite a bit. I did it quite a bit. So now,
what did they say to you? You address squatters directly. What are they saying to you when you say, "Hey, this is illegal"?
Property, and I did. I always stood on the sidewalk, okay? Because lots of times it was more than one family that was occupying a house. So they would pour out. It was really awful, and it's unbelievable when you hear it. But they would be in the front of the house, smoking weed, doing whatever they wanted. And I'd pull up. I said, "What's going on here? Exactly what do you think you're doing? And what you're doing here is illegal." And they'd have kids there. I'd call sanitation. I'd call Child Protective Services. And I got on it in a roundabout sort of a way, but we made sure that the police got involved if they needed to get involved, because we had neighbors now complaining about the ins and the outs and the comings and goings. 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, didn't much matter. One house, the house I first started to tell you about, they were angry because the drug deal went bad or whatever the hell happened, and they took a Molotov cocktail and threw it through the window of the house. Meanwhile, this lovely family living on the side have got people running through their backyards. It was hell here. It was absolutely bad, terrible. And we see what's going on now in the 5 boroughs. That house that went on fire in Brooklyn. We had the 6 illegal immigrants that took up the house in the Bronx. Okay? Guns, drugs, and underage, a 7-year-old, endangering the welfare of a minor. That just happened last week. So we've got this going on. It's all forms. It's happening everywhere now. And people are afraid to put out for sale signs. And I actually spoke to somebody what's today, Wednesday? On Monday. I spoke to somebody on Monday. She said to me, Vickie, what do I do? I said, listen, you're selling your mom's house, another inheritance, because that's what happens also. If you inherit the property and you don't live there, you might live on Long Island, or you might live upstate an hour away. You don't know what's going on. The neighbors haven't seen anybody, and they snuck in through a basement window. They set themselves up at home, and you just don't know. I said, listen to me. Do not put out a for sale sign. Don't do it. And if you have a Ring camera, and if you don't, get the camera, because that could survey the area quite broad. And we could you could see when someone's coming in, the date, it's time stamped, and that could help you with the police as if your house should be squatted on. Those are the two pieces of advice I gave her.
What you're describing really sounds like a situation that's out of control. And you mentioned earlier that as a city council member, you're kind of at the mercy right now of state government. What does that look like? Do they have any legislative solution that you think is actually going to get passed?
Well, we have two people on Long Island. We have Jake Blumenkrantz in the Assembly, who's introducing bill number 6894, which would change the time from 30 days to 45 days. Now, what does that mean exactly? When you have 30 days, you could blink your eye, 30 days are over. And you don't have enough time to get your legal team in order and to really bring across the legalities that are involved. So he wants to take that from 30 to 45 days. My piece of legislation says take it from 30 to 160 days, which is closer to 180 days, which would make it 6 months. All right. So they also want the word tenant changed to be squatter, because you're no longer a tenant. You are now a squatter. You're living for free. And that would be put into the penal code. I also, in my bill, want this to be criminal charges. I don't see any mention here, because there's another state Senate bill that's being introduced also by a state senator on Long Island, and that is to take the word squatter occupant out and make it squatter, and change the different rules about unlawful eviction. So it's a little weedy for me. It really should be more like the sheriff did in Florida, cut and dry. Really cut and dry. You're on property. You cannot show proof that you own it. You cannot show proof that you rent it. You get out. Get out. You don't belong here, and give the police the ability to get rid of this person who's living in your house. 1, 2, 3, quick.
You're one of a few Republican city council members. The vast majority are Democrats. What is it like working across the aisle on this issue specifically? Are they receptive? Because this really seems like an issue that transcends party lines.
Most definitely. You know, the sad part about this, Brittany, is that this all just became really public. You know, what I did last year with the squatters that I had went unnoticed. Okay, I went on some talk shows, I did some news and this and that, but it was isolated. We're finding out now, because I have people coming to my office from all the boroughs. That's why my colleague, Ina Vernikoff, she did her news conference 1 week after I did mine. I had 400 people at my news conference 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, 400 concerned constituents came out and stood with the people whose homes were actually being occupied and squatted on right now in real time. So they did that in Brooklyn. So now when that hit, then this house gets busted up in the Bronx, and we find out it's illegal migrants. And remember that kid that was on TikTok who was telling everybody, you know, when you come across the border, this is how you do it. I mean, this is what we have going on. So when it became this broad issue, it was in such a short period of time. We really have not yet had a chance to exchange, you know, conversation. If I introduce this, will you back me up on it? will it just be the lone 9 of us, which is 3 Democrats or 4 and the 5 of us. So it's really, we're very limited in what we're able to do. We need bipartisan on all of this. We cannot do it on our own. That's obvious.
What about Mayor Eric Adams? How helpful has he been? He said this in a recent interview, quote, "I don't believe a person should be in someone's home and stay there without contributing to what it costs to be in that home." So have you had a conversation with him? What does his help look like?
Well, look, right now, the mayor's plate is overflowing. And yes, he's given this quite a bit of attention. He will give this attention. But again, I cannot introduce anything. We cannot change anything. The law states that if someone is in your home for 30 days, they are allowed to stay. That's what the law is. So until upstate changes the law, there's not much we could do here. The police hands, once again, our cops' hands are tied.
From what you're saying, obviously from what's happening, it sounds like there are a lot of legal loopholes that people are going through. Who initially was this law supposed to help?
I think, in honesty, it was supposed to help tenants. Tenants who fall on bad times. And there are plenty of people falling on bad times. We want to help those people. As a landlord, especially if they're good tenants, if they're having a rough time and they can't make the rent that month, you say, okay, what could you give me towards that rent? And they, in good faith, give you, if the rent is like $1,000 a month, they give you $200. And then the following month, they give you $5. And then the following month, maybe they give you the $1,000. But that's in good faith. That's I think, where and how, with good intent. That's how I believe it started. Until COVID, when people were laid off and people weren't going to work, and I have somebody who owns a small 3-story walk-up in Astoria, and he knew his people were working remotely from home. And they were making the same money they were making as if they went into the office. But 3 families decided they weren't going to pay him rent. So these are the legal loopholes. If I give you $500 towards the $1,000, then I'm paying you, but I'm not paying you exactly what you want. So we can't, in essence, call them a squatter just yet. It's when they don't pay at all, and they decide to change the locks on the doors too. That's another horror story.
So, Councilwoman, what's next? You've had your eyes set on this issue for the past about year and a half. What are you looking forward to next? What's your message to whoever needs to make some moves here?
My message is to my state and to anybody listening to me right now. Get on the state officials. Get on the state electeds. We must pressure our 5, these guys are from Long Island, okay? They live in a different world than the 5 boroughs. Completely different world. So if we got 2 guys that are going to do this, an assemblyman and a state senator from Long Island, we need our state senators and our assemblymen and women here in the 5 boroughs to act accordingly. Do something with bill number 6894 or 8868. Maybe they want to expand on it. Come together, figure something out. As soon as you get it fixed in Albany, we could do what we need to do down here in the city. We could get Vickie Paladino's bill introduced on the floor of the city council, and we could get some bipartisanship, and we could get this law passed. That 30 days is nonsense. It has to be stretched to 180 days, which is 6 months, which will give the owner of the property the right to his property.
And do you think, let's say your bill does get on the floor there, do you think you will have that bipartisan support to get it passed and get it passed quickly?
Well, the way it happens is we have committee hearings. So this would go before a committee. So I'll know right out of the gate. When I get my bill number, then we start to make phone calls to our colleagues. And we try to get as many people signed on to that bill. 15, 18, 21, dream number 27, ultra dream number 32. That's supermajority. So that's what you try to do. You try to whip up your colleagues. And you have to explain to them what's happening and what this bill entails, and know that it's not hurting a good tenant, that it's hurting bad people that shouldn't be in the home. And the people's heads were popping because they could not believe when this hit that you mean to tell me if I go to Florida, Vic, I got to worry that I'm gone? I mean, this is really scary stuff.
Well, especially in New York, because everyone knows someone going to Florida for the winter. So when they come back, are you expecting an influx once summer comes back, people are coming back to New York, of this issue to reemerge?
I don't know. For my district, I hope not. I don't know what the rest of the city is. You know, we've got a big migrant problem here now. It's huge, tremendous. And if they're taking over your home, you go to the grocery store. Imagine going to the grocery store or just going away for a weekend and coming back and finding strangers in your house. How scary is that? How scary is that? So I don't know what to expect.
And what are your constituents saying about that specifically?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for bringing this to everybody's attention. I'm so glad it finally got the widespread news that it got. But my people right now, I mean, they have their neighbors checking their houses, as they should. You know, nobody should. If you go away on vacation, don't post it on Facebook. Post it. Nobody needs to know you're gone. A trusted neighbor, a relative that lives in the area that can drive by every day, every other day, twice a week, whatever it is, to keep an eye on your property. Yes, that's what needs to be done.
Well, Councilwoman Paladino, thank you again for such an insightful conversation, and I hope you join me again soon.
I hope so too, Brittany. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.